There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. I've got two guests with me today, guys. We are joined by Matt Weil. He is the VP of Sales over at Highspot. We've also got the Chief Marketing Officer, Jon Perera, over at Highspot with us today. Guys, how's it going today?
Fantastic. Thanks for having us.
It's going great. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely, guys. Matt, had you on the podcast in the past. We had a great conversation about scaling high growth sales teams. Still one of my favorite episodes. We got a link to episode 850. You were back on the podcast back then. We'll put that in the show notes. We've also had Jake Brawley from the team at Highspot. So you guys are becoming a regular fixture here on B2B Growth. And I'm really excited for this because we're going to be talking about sales and marketing alignment, which has been a common theme for us. And I think a lot of people, may be a little bit tired of this, but hey, we've got a sales leader and a marketing leader on at the same time, and you're both accountable to hearing each other at the same time. You can't just come on and say, well, my CMO says this and da-da-da-da. So I think this will be a little bit interesting. We're going to talk about it specifically within the context of the subscription economy, which in my opinion, sales and marketing alignment, if you are in a subscription-based business, SaaS or not, really affects the importance of sales and marketing alignment. But before I give too much away, let's have you guys do a little bit of background on yourself and what you and the team at Highspot are up to these days. Jon, let's kick it over to you first, man.
All right. Thanks so much for having me. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Highspot. I've been here about a year, and I've been in sales and marketing roles for about 25 to 30 years to date myself. Highspot, as your listeners probably know, we're the number one rated sales enablement platform in the category, the only vendor backed by Salesforce. And our whole focus is around preparing sellers, engaging buyers, and helping to drive the analytics that support that. And we are having a great time. Companies using us include Aetna, Pinterest, John Deere, Adobe, and more. And we're based out of Seattle.
I love it. Matt, your turn. We had to let marketing go first here on B2B Growth since we are a marketing focused show, but we're not going to give sales, second tier. We're going to let you tee up your intro too, man.
I'll just say ditto. And then we can move on. But welcome. Thanks for having me, Matt Weil, VP of Sales at Highspot. I've been here 2 years, and last time I was on your show, I talked about how I've gone into several companies and grown them, and either sold them or gone public. Had a lot of fun over these last years since we last talked. It's been about a half year, I think, and we're just growing very rapidly, hitting international markets, growing our customer base in all segments, and having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we talked about teeing up the conversation today on sales and marketing alignment within the subscription economy, I think most folks know what that means, but I would love for you guys to kind of unpack your take on that. When SaaS, obviously, software as a service, it's delivered as a subscription, but there are really all sorts of different things where subscription is becoming the norm in both B2C and B2B. Jon, do you want to speak to this trend a little bit just to kind of kick things off to start?
Yeah, I think you could say that this sort of revolution has been underway for a while, and across both B2B and B2C, there's a massive transformation taking place in the economy. And so if it's razor blades or the media that you consume, the cars that you lease, the software that you acquire as a subscription, it's fundamentally changing the rules of business. Just anecdotally, when I started at Adobe in 2011, we had this thing called Creative Suite, Photoshop, InDesigner, all of those great products. It cost $3,000 for one box. The end of my first year, we decided to flip the thing on its head and flip it to subscription for about $70 a user. And it massively changed everything about the way that the company worked, in particular, how sales and marketing leaders have to work together. And that's what Matt and I are trying to do here at Highspot.
Yeah, and to add to that, the sales and marketing alignment is so important on this. I actually have been selling subscription before SaaS was SaaS, actually, when it was ASP, being application service provider in the late 90s. And our sales and marketing departments weren't aligned. We were working in vacuums. We were just trying to get people to buy something for whatever we could get for it. And once we got aligned and once we got smart, the rubber hit the road. And now everything's obviously evolved over the last 20 plus years. I'm dating myself, actually almost more than that, 25 years. And it's really been fun. And what Jon and I have been doing is really staying aligned because we have to, because 60% of decision makers value the flexibility to adjust to capacity in a subscription model. So you got to really pay attention to what's going on. You got to be smart. You got to listen, and you got to watch the market. You also have your competitors that, if they know they're losing, can really start trying to hurt the market. So you got to get really smart on value selling. You can't watch the terrorists try and bring you down. And so you got to be really smart about it and don't get afraid of what your competitors are doing, because that's the only way they can win.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love for you guys to talk a little bit about some of the challenges and the opportunities. In my mind, there's the greater opportunity, right? We run pretty much a subscription-based business here at Sweetfish. We've productized our service and offered our podcast production really on a retainer basis, which we look at a lot of the top SaaS companies and look at their growth models and their strategies and take a lot from that, even though we don't offer a SaaS product. There are a lot of similarities. And so in my mind, I think of some of the opportunities. You stack revenue, but then there are some of the challenges. You've got to be able to retain customers, and it's based on their experience. So sales, marketing, and CS all being on the same page. Tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you guys have seen and how you guys have been addressing them at Highspot.
Yeah, I think, a couple of different dimensions of this. One of them is that your customer can now hire and fire you at any point along the customer journey. It's not just about selling them a car and forgetting about it. It's keeping that customer over time. And so we have to think about the entire customer life cycle, from the time that they hear about the offer to the time they decide to renew and upsell. From a marketing perspective, lots of interesting challenges. Pricing and packaging. This used to be really old and boring. And now in the generation of product-led growth, how you introduce and design your product offer in a way to drive upsell, to drive virality, to drive deeper adoption is absolutely critical. And even things about, how we market after the sale. How do you introduce moments of delight into the customer's experience after they've acquired your product, a month later, 2 years later? So these are some of the things we're starting to think about from a marketing perspective. And I think it's equally true from a sales perspective and customer success. Matt?
Yeah, the alignment, again, I'll maybe being a little repetitive, but Jon and I have to be completely aligned. Our enablement team has to be completely aligned, because Jon's going to do the job on sort of positioning us to our customers, but we also have to position ourselves internally with the sales team. And they have to understand how to sell a subscription-based model and how to sell and be value selling. The other thing we have to do is work closely with finance to make sure that we have the right compensation package to drive the right behavior. Because if you don't have the right compensation package, you're not going to motivate your people to do the right thing when it comes to a subscription-based model. That is also not just your AEs, but also your AMs who are dealing with renewal expansion. We all have to be aligned. We all have to understand how to do value selling, and we have to know how to position ourselves.
All right, today's growth story revolves around search engine marketing, and we'll be shining the spotlight on Aegis Software, a company that makes software for manufacturing operations. Aegis was one of the first companies in their space to invest in search marketing, but as competition grew, their performance plateaued. To counter this, they hired Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. With unparalleled experience in inbound lead gen for B2B companies, Directive was able to increase Aegis's monthly online leads by 457%, while at the same time lowering their cost per lead by 147%. Now I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
You guys bring up a great point. Jon talked about pricing, and I've seen, folks like Patrick Campbell at Profit Well just create so much great content around the importance of your pricing strategy and tweaking that and honing that. I love their pricing page breakdown series that they've done, a video series on LinkedIn and in other formats. You bring up a really great point too, Matt, on, there's the financial aspects externally, but internally as well. Can we camp out on that a little bit on, the compensation model for customer success or account managers or whoever it is internally that is tasked with that retention, upsell, cross-sell, because I think that can just be kind of, we addressed that a couple of years ago, but maybe you've gone through, product market fit changes, you've gone through pricing changes, and you need to adjust that. So I think speaking to that and some of the things you guys have done there could be really helpful for other teams.
Yeah, we actually just spent a lot of time doing that internally because we were thinking of account management to start on expansion is the most important thing. But actually, we realized we made a mistake. One, expansion is going to happen if you do all the other things right. You need to focus on the renewal. And so you have to compensate your customer success or AM team on the renewal. And if they do that really well, expansion is going to come. More products can be sold. If they give the customer just true love, they're going to be able to get all those other things. And so we create a compensation plan to drive the renewal, be smart to not think about the expansion part, but more on the renewal part. And then actually they bring, maybe getting a little too in the weeds, but they actually bring in other people to help them with the sales. So I don't want my AMs to start thinking about dollars and cents. I want them to be thinking about renewals, which makes the subscription even as important, but they're actually just thinking about the renewal. I don't know if that made sense, but we spent a lot of time doing this, and we literally just rolled this out a quarter ago.
And I think just to add to that, there's an art and a science around compensation for customer success and account management teams. And I love that part of the science that Matt described. And to add to a flavor of the art, many organizations, including ours, will compensate these teams based on customer satisfaction, net promoter score, net favorability. There's things that you can do with product-led growth systems to actually track and measure that inside the systems that the customer is actually using and subscribing for you. And so we put a lot of emphasis on, hey, your job is to put on the white gloves and really deliver an exceptional experience at every possible turn. And if you do that level of sort of touch, then the renewal, then the upsell, then the cross-sell can also take place.
Yeah, so you guys are advocating more for the compensation, more heavily weighted on the net promoter score, the customer feedback, those pieces, as opposed to the renewal itself?
Yeah, my proposal was you got to start with delighting the customer before you have a conversation about retention. So that's job zero. Then, you'll, as Matt was saying, retention, focus goals, and renewal are absolutely critical. That then leads to upsell. I'll turn over to you, Matt.
Yeah, we think that we focus, and I think a lot of companies focus on, if you do the renewal right, you're going to have to then do customer satisfaction, the NPS, all those things have to happen first for you to be able to say, do you want to become my customer again? And if you start talking about it early and really showing them the white glove love that we really promote, you're going to then get all those other things. The outcome of that is wonderful expansion, additional products, but buying more subscriptions, expanding in the customer base. But if you have to think about, I always want to have this customer. I always have to think about the renewal, as Jon pointed out. At any time they can leave you, and if you ever think they can't, you better watch out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love what you guys are advocating for here in thinking about driving up customer satisfaction as opposed to how can we just drive renewals, right? I mean, it's one of those things that applies to every phase in life. Like, how can I have a better marriage, as opposed to thinking about what I need, you think about what the other person needs, and then that leads to your happiness, right? We look for the lag measure too often, and we don't back up and look at the lead measure, the lead indicator that's going to determine success, right? So tell us a little bit, guys, as we move on from AM and CS compensation. I love that part of the conversation. I think we've got a unique opportunity here to kind of get into the weeds of how the two of you, as counterparts and sales and marketing leaders under one roof, get on the same page. You drive alignment. What are some of the things that you guys look for in your regular rhythm of communication where, hey, maybe we're not on the same page here, or we need to level set here? What are some of those forcing functions? I mean, down to the nitty gritty of, how you guys handle your ongoing communication. Because I think, sales and marketing leaders, especially on fast growth teams where things are changing quickly, they have this idea of, sales and marketing alignment is important, but how do I do it day to day? So I'd love to hear from you guys tactically on that point. Jon, let's start with you on this one, man.
Yeah, sure. I think job one is to align across sales, marketing, customer success on a shared vision of the customer journey. From the time that they're at the top of the funnel to the time they transact and on board to the time they renew, we all have to have the same nomenclature, the same vision, the same just taxonomy of the different steps that the customer takes along that. So that's job one. I think the second thing is to align on what are the very specific metrics of success that we'll track and measure together across all of those teams, across every single one of those buyer stages. And just anecdotally, today, most of that lives in 5 different dashboards looked at by 3 different teams, and it never comes together. And so Matt and I often advocate, hey, have your customer state of the union meeting where once a quarter, once a month, all of those stakeholders come together and look at that shared dashboard. Number 3, you have to have a really strong sort of backbone or foundation of data, operations, and systems. And so sometimes you'll hear this as like a customer data platform, but the 360-degree view of the customer, the systems that sit on top of that allow you to automate experiences. And then I think, just a little magic that we try to inject along the way, moments of delight. At every single step of the buyer journey, how are those 3 teams coming together and designing these little moments where the customer takes a step back and just is like, wow, these guys are awesome to work with. So that's one point of view.
Yeah, and to add to that, Jon and I are completely aligned on all of our goals. And it's not just us saying at the beginning of the quarter, here are our goals, I'll see you in 3 months. Good luck. We are sitting there talking, Jon and I probably talk daily. We have different meetings during the week where we look at our goals, make sure we're tracking towards it. There's never a time where we would look at each other and say, I didn't know you were working on that. I'm sorry, I didn't know that. My prior jobs, that happened, because I think in this day and age, if we're completely not aligned, because there's so many unbelievable tools out there, it's too important. There's heavy competition. We have to be aligned. To add to that, we also have to be aligned to our customer goals. So our goals have to align with them. So we have to be very, very aware of what those goals are and knowing that those goals are changing all the time. So Jon knows about, typically, I think in prior lives, the CMO probably wouldn't know much about the QBRs we're having with customers and what's happening in them and how are those goals, what's happening with those, because those goals are driving the revenue leaders' goals. It should be driving also our marketing goals. So Jon knows what's happening in our QBRs that we're having with our customers. And internally in our QBRs, we're talking about our customers, which is bringing this alignment together.
And I love what you said there, Matt, in just the consistent communication cadence that you have. I got 3 C's there. Man, it's like I'm a Baptist preacher with the alliteration. The consistent communication cadence. I just coined it here, folks. But just the fact that you said that there's rarely the case, if ever, where one of you says to the other, I didn't know you were working on that, or, that really surprised me. And, it's that quantity of time leads to the quality. Again, to draw a relationship analogy, if you're not spending time with your counterpart heading up sales or marketing, then that relationship is not going to be quality, just like any other relationship in your life. And so I think that takeaway of just setting up that regular cadence, whether it's a daily check-in call, every other day, whatever you can do in your environment to set up that consistent cadence with your counterpart on the other side of the fence, if you will. Well, as we wrap it up here today, guys, any final parting words that you want to give to sales and marketing leaders on things that they should be doing other than that consistent communication as we wrap up the conversation on alignment today, guys?
Sort of part maybe with 3 quick thoughts, and Matt will jump on. I think it's super important for companies to look hard at, is there a system or platform or technology that can help me bring these teams together to make this experience happen? It's one thing for people to talk together, and it's yet another to have a system that can operationalize it. 2, we think sales enablement is a really core component. We didn't spend a lot of time on that, but sales enablement plays a critical role, the glue in communication, process, and capability across sales enablement to make sure we're delivering a great experience. And 3, just empowering those sales enablement professionals with some great community resources. Salesenablement.pro is one of them. We'll give you a pointer to that one, and there's tons of other stuff out there. Matt?
Yeah, and the ongoing communication, but also trust your gut, because in these growth companies, you're going to be seeing probably a lot of unnatural things for your competitor. You're going to have data that's going to be telling you probably some interesting information on, do we raise prices? Do we lower prices? Don't make knee-jerk reactions. Take the time, trust each other, work together, collaborate, talk to your customers. And really, before you make some big decisions, specifically on pricing and the topic we're talking about here, really make sure you're making the right things for your business, because I've seen too many times people make knee-jerk reactions and it comes back to bite them.
Yeah, absolutely. As a part of a fast growth team myself, I can echo that sentiment. That's great parting words, Matt. I really appreciate it. Well, guys, if anybody listening to this would like to reach out, learn more about what you guys are doing over at Highspot, or just stay connected or ask any follow-up questions of either one of you, what's the best way for them to reach out or stay connected with you guys? Jon, we'll stay with the cadence of starting with you and then to you, Matt.
Yeah, we're both LinkedIn guys. So you can reach me at linkedin.com, and I'm Jon, Jon Perera. You've got my name listed there. You can also just reach out to sales@highspot.com. We never mind those emails. Those are good ones.
Yeah, LinkedIn and sales@highspot.com. You'll have somebody call you right back.
Marketing and sales alignment in the flesh right here to close out the episode. That was fantastic, guys. Well, this was a great conversation. Always fun chatting with the great team over at Highspot. You guys will have to tell Jake I said, hey, thank you so much for joining me on the show today, guys.
Thanks.
Terrific. Thanks for having us.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big 3, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.